Hello, my merry band of O-Satters, and welcome to this, the 21st episode of the Sockmatician podcast. I am Sockmatician, otherwise known as Nathan Taylor, and you can find me here on YouTube or on Ravelry, where I have a group. Come and join the fun. You can also find me as Sockmatician on Instagram and Twitter. Instagram's fun for knitters, isn't it? It took me a long time to get into the swing of Instagram, and I thought that Twitter was where it was all at, but it does certainly seem to be that Instagram is where it's all going on with the knitters. So I'm really enjoying getting to see everyone's finished objects on there. If you haven't checked me out yet on Instagram, then please do, and say hello, and I'll happily say hello back, and I look forward to meeting you on there. Welcome to, it's a lovely sunny day today. It's the 20th of April, and it's my only day this week where I can actually do any podcasting. I'm really pleased with myself, because I am sticking to my once every 2 weeks. Since the little blip early part of this year where Beyond the Fence took up all of my time and energy, now I'm back in the swing of it. I have to say, I'm enjoying podcasting so much. My only drawback in the whole podcasting world is I wish I had more time to watch podcasts. I don't really have a great deal of time to do it. There are a few that I catch up with as much as I possibly can, and I've done it again already, like less than 2 minutes in, and I've just cracked my fingers. Wow. I don't even know I'm doing it, and then I hear it and it's like, oh God, I can't believe it. There are many more podcasters out there that I haven't yet had a chance to try, even though I know that they're becoming very popular. There's a couple that I have recently become aware of. Eric Lutz, who is his details are right here, a Canadian podcaster. Hello, Eric. I don't know if you watch. I think you might do, actually, but if you do, hello. If not, you'll never see it doesn't matter. He's a lot of fun, and I'm enjoying getting to know a fellow male podcaster. And I've also dipped into the first episode of The Grocery Girls, which I really enjoyed, and I look forward to seeing more of them. They're two kind of more recent podcasters on the scene, and it seems like they've already managed to amass a huge following, so they must be doing something right. So how have you been? Are you knitting well? There's so much I want to talk about today. I'm going to try and condense all of this into a much shorter episode than usual, because I don't have the largest amount of time today to be cracking on with it. So let's plough in. One of the first things I want to mention is my lovely friends Kay and Dan from the Bakery Bears. Dan is doing a double knit along, or a Dan's knit along, a decal anyway, and I think I've just had my lunch, I've cracked my fingers, and now I'm belching at you. Welcome to the Sockmatician podcast. Do you expect anything more from me? I suspect not. Dan is recently I had a couple of sessions on FaceTime with Dan. We've never actually met in person, but it is going to happen soon, and we learned together. I already knew. I taught Dan how to do some double knitting, because he was really keen to learn after I appeared on their podcast in the first external Knit or Forfeit. And because we both drew, you know this already if you've watched this before, if not, I'm just catching up very quickly. Because he and I both drew on our scores, we both decided we would fulfill each other's forfeits / challenges. And my challenge to Dan was to teach him how to learn double knitting. And he wasn't sure how he'd get on with it. Well, he's doing magnificently well. And he started a double knit along on their thread. So if you follow the Bakery Bears on Ravelry, then head over to their thread and join in the fun. I think it's open for a month, and there's lots and lots of people there who are knitting some DK loveliness. Delighted, of course, to see that lots of people are knitting patterns by moi, which makes me very proud indeed, and I can't wait to see how they all progress. Some of the people are joining in, like Dan, who have never done any double knitting at all in the past, and that is brilliant. So I can't thank Dan and Kay enough for hosting this and for helping to share the DK love like I try to do right here on this little podcast now. Dan is knitting Vanishing Point, which is one of my hat patterns, and various other people are joining him on that as well. And it's a really fun hat. If you're new to double knitting, it's quite a good starter pattern. I would recommend doing the alternate cast on, because if you haven't done anything like this before, because the invisible cast on in the round can be really, really flimsy and tricky unless you're comfortable and familiar with it. But you can do the long tail cast on, the alternating two-colour long tail cast on, and there's links in the pattern for all of that. So if you want a good starter pattern, that's really good, because unlike a scarf, which admittedly is nice and easy and fun to do, it goes on for a long time, because obviously you want a scarf to have some decent length to it. Whereas with a hat, it's a nice, simple, small project, and you also get a chance to learn decreases, because as the crown gets smaller, you start doing decreases in double knitting, which are a useful skill to have, which is a useful skill to have. So thank you, Dan and Kay. I'm going to be popping into that thread regularly, so if anyone has any problems and wants to post any questions there, then please do. What else has been going on? I did promise myself a stress-free time after Beyond the Fence finished, and I was hoping I would get it, and I am getting it. It's I can't tell you. I'm working my box office job, which is Motown at the Shaftesbury Theatre. The show is incredibly busy, so it's not necessarily as stress-free at work as it sometimes is, because the show is sold out every night, and there's a lot of people making phone calls about the show, and it keeps me busy, keeps me off the streets. So that's work, and I'm really not doing much else apart from a bit of socialising, seeing friends, and getting a chance to do some knitting. And I am trying my very, very hardest to catch up on all of my knitting pattern writing. What I was doing through the whole Beyond the Fence experience was I was carrying on knitting, and I was still making new designs and things like that, but I didn't have any time to sit down and write them up. So any free time I did have, I would then knit something else, and I got further and further behind. So the weekend just gone, I had a bit of a bumper release of 3 patterns all in one go. It was the Hillary hat, which is the stranded hat that I showed on the podcast last time, which was the one that I made out of the John Arbon Knit by Numbers with my hand spun, that was made from the fibres that my friend Hillary had collected from a field, which I then washed, carded, spun and knat with. Nat being the past tense of knit, nat, nut. And that has now been given to Hillary. So it was really, really lovely. She didn't know she was going to get it. She didn't know I'd been doing any of the work with the fibres at all. In fact, I think she'd forgotten she'd given them to me. So Ben and I met up with her for dinner and the theatre last week. We went to see Sunset Boulevard, starring Glenn Close. More about that in a moment. And we were just chatting away and catching up on everything. And I said to Ben, "Shall I give her the present now?" And she went, "Yeah, you do." So I brought it out, and at first she thought it was just a knitted hat. Now, Hillary herself is a fairly new knitter. She can knit. She hasn't yet progressed to doing anything more elaborate than garter stitch squares, and she's making some big squares. She's making a big checkerboard blanket with some nice chunky wool, and it's going to be really lovely. And it just goes to show you that you don't need to do anything particularly complicated with knitting to come up with something very effective and attractive, as her blanket is going to be. But she is keen and therefore knitworthy, and so she was delighted at the fact that I'd made her a hat. And then I pointed out that the cream fibre, the cream yarn, was from the fibre that she'd given to me. She's like, honestly, her jaw dropped, and she went, "Is it really for me?" And what was really nice about her response is the next time she went to the toilet, she left the table and then came back and grabbed the hat to take with her. She wanted to try it on in a mirror and make sure that it looked okay, and it suits her very well. So that was very gratifying. So that one, the Hillary hat, is available on my Ravelry store, and that's for £3. Yeah, now of course Ravelry, if you're an EU member, it will add on VAT, so the face value is £3, and plus whatever percentage of that your VAT dictated by your country would come to. And the other one was the portcullis cowl, which again I demonstrated last time. You'll remember seeing this, the portcullis cowl. I've now released the pattern. I wasn't sure whether or not I would release it yet, and I thought long and hard about this because the stitch pattern that I've used, these tuck stitches, are Nancy Marchant, who pioneered and developed the tuck stitches, is publishing a book later on this year called Tuck Stitches, and I did offer to her, I did speak to her and I said I'd be very happy to hold off on the release of this pattern if you would rather until after your book comes out, and she very graciously said no, go ahead, please do. So with Nancy's blessing, the portcullis cowl is now available as well, and that is, I believe, £3.50 again on my Ravelry store, portcullis cowl. And the third one, oh, this one's been a long time coming, I tell you. I finally released the Wren scarf pattern. Now this is the cabled brioche scarf that I knitted for my niece Jenny for Christmas, and it's called the Wren scarf because Jenny's always been Jenny Wren to among the family, and so it's the Wren scarf because it was for her, and it's Jenny modelling in the pictures, and it was quite a big undertaking writing the pattern for this. The scarf itself is a piece of cake, genuinely a piece of cake to knit, but the writing of the pattern was much more involved because it utilises my one pass two colour brioche method rather than doing two brioche. I have beans on toast for lunch, and it was a little bit soon to wibbly pops. It uses the one colour two pass brioche method, and because that is sort of as yet undocumented, because it's something that I've developed myself, whether or not I'm the first person to do it, but I have certainly put together the way of doing it on my own. It needed careful handling, and it took a long time to get round to taking all the photographs of me working the technique so that I could give detailed photo tutorials within the pattern. I've also got my video tutorial here on YouTube for how to do the one pass method, and then just sort of putting it all into words so that it would make sense. Well, I got tech editor extraordinaire Michelle Hazel to give it the once over. Now Michelle is just brilliant. She doesn't just make sure the maths tallies, she looks stylistically at grammar and punctuation. She'll make incredibly useful suggestions about this section might need a bit more clarification, this might be confusing for a knitter, this might be better off up here with this information. She's brilliant at just seeing the world from the eyes of someone who doesn't know the pattern, doesn't know the techniques, and she's amazing. So Michelle, thank you so much for your hard work on this pattern. I really appreciate it, and I can't wait to see you very soon, I hope. So if anyone is looking for tech editing work, I know Michelle's very busy at the moment because she works for various magazines and does a lot of freelance stuff as well as being a mum to two and wife and and all-round fabulous person. But if you are looking for someone who will really do a fabulous job, then get in touch. She's recently just joined the ranks of Instagram, as I was talking about earlier, and I'm delighted to see her on there. So she is Sticks and String, spelt like so. If you want to pop onto Instagram and say hello to her there and give her a follow, that will make me happy to think that that I'm sharing the Instagram love as well as the double knit love. So finally, I got my backside in gear and wrote up the pattern, sent it all off to Michelle. She sent it back to me with all these amazing suggestions. I implemented all of those, and the pattern went live as well. So if you don't want to wait until my podcast episodes, which might be a little bit sporadic, who knows, to find out whether or not I've got new patterns up for sale, then the best thing to do is head over to my website and subscribe to my newsletter. Now don't worry, this is not a data gathering exercise. I am not interested in selling on your details to anybody else, I promise, because I would hate that if someone did that with my information. It's simply a way for me to be able to give information to people who might be interested in it. So if you haven't already done so and would like to be kept in the loop, then go to sockmatician.com/newsletter and you can sign up on the form that's there. All you need is your name and your email address. That's it. I don't ask for anything else. I don't need anything else. And then when I release a new pattern, I always send out a mail shot, and there's usually, in fact, I say usually, there's always a sneaky little discount for people who are loyal subscribers. So you can get some cash off the price of the pattern for a limited time if you buy it through the newsletter. Simple, right? I've talked about this last time, but I do sign people up for the newsletter when they buy a pattern from me. Feel free to unsubscribe if this has happened to you and you don't wish to receive those letters. It's just a way of keeping everyone's information in one place as far as I'm concerned. It's nothing more sinister than that, I promise. So, finally those three are out. And thankfully, the Wren scarf particularly has proved rather popular. It sold very quickly over the first night, thanks to the newsletter. I didn't mention the price. It's on for £4.50. The reason why it's a little bit more expensive is because it has such copious information in it. You don't need to know anything at all about brioche knitting. You never need to have done any brioche knitting, or certainly any one-pass brioche knitting, in order to be able to knit it. Everything you need is right there in the pattern. That's why I'm quite so slow at writing up my patterns, ladies and gentlemen, because I don't want to assume in any of my patterns a level of knitting knowledge that might be beyond any specific knitter who might want to make the item. So I make sure that I load my patterns up with as much information as I possibly can, so that even the merest beginner, novice knitter should be able to follow the instructions, read the tutorials, watch the videos, and then find success with it. And it's serving me well so far. And the reason I started doing this was because I know that double knitting is still fairly niche as a technique, and I didn't want to limit the amount of people who would be able to make my patterns, because I was assuming that everybody would know how to do it. Of course they don't. So any of my double knit patterns have full instructions on how to do the technique for the beginner as well as the advanced knitter. That's just my little plug for myself. It does mean, however, that it takes me a little bit longer to get the patterns out, and I do spend quite a lot of time putting this stuff together because I want it to be as comprehensive as I can. On that note, I've also been, this last few days, working on two of the other patterns. You might remember the scarf, which is the skull and crossbones double knitted pattern with the wavy brioche section down the middle. Well, I started writing that one up. Now that I've got my photo tutorials sorted from the Wren scarf, I thought, well, it'll be hopefully just copy and paste into the scarf and into the Lewis scarf as well, which is one I made for my nephew for Christmas. Both of these scarves use the one-pass two-colour brioche method in them. Well, how wrong I was. I'd forgotten, because the scarf was being made sort of last October, November, I'd forgotten quite what I was doing in the scarf. And it's not that any of this stuff is difficult, but a lot of it will be new and slightly unusual. So therefore, every single aspect needs to be tutorialized in full. So I didn't make life easy for myself. So what I've done is it uses the invisible two-colour tutorial cast on, for which there is a tutorial already on my website, on my Ha! I'll start all of that again. It uses the two-colour invisible alternating cast-on for double knitting, for which I have a tutorial on my YouTube channel, thank you. But partway along, it needs a change of colours. So because one side of this, I don't mean one face, but literally one half of the scarf to one side is one colour and one half is the other. It doesn't have a border the way most of my scarves do. So I wanted the colours to go all the way to the bottom without any blips. So I needed to find a way of changing the colours on that. It's very, very simple, but it's never been done before that I've seen. It probably has, but I wanted to make sure that people would know how to do it, of course, again. So I had to write out how to do that. It also utilises not only double knitting but also the one pass two colour brioche within the same row, so both of those techniques need to be annotated separately, and how to transition from one to the other. Again, none of this is hard, it really isn't. In the doing of it is really, really simple, but the writing of it is really long-winded. What else has it got? The faces on the skulls are done with some double knitting lace. So there's a left leaning decrease, a right leaning decrease, double yarn overs, and a centered double decrease, all of which need to be annotated individually for double knitting. It's like, oh, really? And then, because I want the cast off at the top to match the cast on at the bottom, I'm doing a Kitchener graft across the top, which I do from one needle. Again, full tutorials, easy done, there it is in the pattern. But again, halfway through it has this colour change, and that's not quite so simple. Again, it's not that tricky, it's just about getting the right yarns in the right places. But writing it out, it's taking me forever. So that one is still pending. I am working on it. I'm nearly there with it, and I think this one also, I think I'll be sending off to Michelle to cast her pernickety eye over. That is a compliment, by the way, a big compliment. So that's that. Then I have to say, doing the Lewis scarf after that will be a breeze. Writing it up will be an absolute breeze. There's hardly any more unusual techniques in it other than the one pass brioche, which is written up and ready to copy and paste. So that one should be nice and easy. In the doing of this, I also was looking at digging out some other things and looking at sort of bits and pieces of one and copy and pasting from other places. So you'll be pleased to know, some of you will be very pleased to know, because I'm getting quite a lot of requests for the pattern for my Genesis shawl, which is the big green and orange shawl that I made nearly 2 years ago now. The pattern is huge. It really, really is going to be a big one, and there's a lot of different techniques in it. It was deliberately a showcase sampler for kind of all the things that are possible within the double knitting field, so I packed in as many techniques as I could, and that was very deliberate. What it does mean, again, is that the pattern for this one is going to be like a PhD thesis. Because I will want people who have never done any double knitting at all to be able to knit it. And I don't know how long it's going to take me, but I dug out a tutorial for one stitch that I filmed at the time, thankfully when I was knitting it, and thankfully I found it because I could not remember how to do this at all. I call it a combined double increase, double decrease, CDIDD. And the reason I call it that is because it is preposterous. Remember, this is all in double knitting, but assuming we're working on just one face, it's an increase where you have 3 stitches coming out of just one stitch. So one stitch increases into 3. However, I didn't want to mess with the stitch count in the row. I didn't want to increase that. So while you're creating the 2 stitches either side of the main center stitch, at the same time you're creating them, you also decrease this one into the stitch next to it and decrease this one into the stitch next to it. So you're creating stitches and removing stitches all at the same time. You have to do that for the front face of the fabric and the reverse face of the fabric. It works really, really well. I have to say, it's incredibly effective, and I love the effect. What it means is you can have sort of new stitches coming out of just the point of one V, and it's entirely symmetrical, and it works brilliantly. It is a ball ache, I ain't gonna lie, but I've been working on writing that up today, and I've I filmed the tutorial, but I hadn't edited it, so I've actually got that up. So there will be some new tutorials going up on my YouTube channel very soon. Gosh, what else is there? Yeah, so I've just been working on the scarf and the Genesis pattern. So I'm going to chip away, keep chipping away one little bit at a time, and soon I hope I'll be able to release the Genesis pattern on the world. There are lots of people in Edinburgh particularly who were quite taken with it. I think whenever I go to a yarn festival, I will probably be wearing that shawl. So if you do see me and you go, he's wearing his Genesis again, it's like, well, yeah, I love my Genesis. I wear it around the house quite a lot. When it gets chillier in the evenings, now that it's kind of spring, we don't really want to have the heating on, but sometimes the house does cool down a bit in the evenings, and sitting and watching television, it's nice to cozy up in my shawl. I really love it. So I can understand why people might want to have one of their own, because I enjoy mine. So that's what I've been up to there. I said that I went to go and see Sunset Boulevard. Well, I did. I've always enjoyed the score of Sunset Boulevard. I think it's a really lovely, rich, lush orchestral score, and it was, I think, probably the last really good score that Andrew Lloyd Webber has written. His later stuff hasn't, this is an awful thing to say, hasn't really lived up to his early work, in my opinion. And I think Sunset Boulevard is lovely. Some beautiful, beautiful songs in it. And it's on at the ENO, the Coliseum. ENO is the English National Opera. Their home is the Coliseum in London, which is a huge theatre. One that I have performed in. Sorry for the grammar pedants among us. One in which I have performed. And when I was in the cast of Spamalot, I was in the original London cast, and we performed like a 12-minute excerpt from the show on the Royal Variety performance, and it was held at the Collie that year. Actually, this is a vast stage, really vast, and the auditorium is massive. With that in mind, we've got a 51-piece orchestra. Oh, God, it sounds amazing. And so many strings, and it's a really, really lovely sound. Glenn Close is reprising her role as Norma Desmond. She played it originally in Los Angeles. I think she did it on Broadway as well. Now, it's interesting, because Glenn Close is not known as a singer. She wasn't back then, 25 years ago or more, whatever. And she's not known for it now. She's got a really, really fine set of pipes. It's not a voice without its problems, and she's getting quite a lot of flack, I think, in reviews for not quite having the pipes for the role. There's moments where she's amazing, like really, really amazing, vocally amazing. She has a break in her voice between her sort of head voice and chest voice, for anyone who knows what I'm talking about, like the soprano range and the big shouty stuff. And it's quite a big break, and it's quite a low break, so her chest voice doesn't go up quite as high as the role would perhaps need. So she's flipping in and out of her head and chest voice quite a lot. Well, do you know what? She did that first time round, she got slated for it then. That wasn't going to have changed. It's the way she sings, it's who she is. You can't change your voice like that. So I think get over that and enjoy the performance, which is wonderful. And although the character of Norma Desmond is a gorgon of a woman, she plays it with a fragility that makes you understand and sympathise with her. It was lovely too to see Michael Xavier playing Joe Gillis. Michael is a good friend of mine. In the past we've done sort of singing waiter gigs together, and we went backstage and saw him afterwards. We stayed in his holding room. He has so many guests every night. He has a holding room, his own. This is not just the holding room for this. It's like Michael's holding room. It's a special dressing room just set aside to keep his guests in before he can come and see them. Very grand, very grand. But Michael is brilliant in the show. He's perfect casting for the role. And if you get a chance, it's only on for the next few weeks, 5-week run in total. But if you are in London and you do get a chance to see it, there are still tickets available, and it's well worth it. Today, I'm drinking some water, and it's water that's come directly from the tap in my kitchen, and it's completely colourless. It's hard to see on screen here. I don't know if that's true to colour, but there's absolutely no colour to it at all. It's totally transparent. You can see all the way through it. It doesn't taste of anything at all, but it's really, really good for stopping people from becoming dehydrated. So cheers. What? After I finished the Hillary hat, I think I showed you this. I had this much left over. So I've got 9 grams, I think. I used 11, I've got 9 grams left of my hand spun. I don't know why I'm telling you this now, I just saw it down by my feet and wanted to show it. So there it is, it's my hand spun. Is it going to focus? Yeah. It's really fuzzy, it's really hairy with guard hairs. It doesn't smell that sheepy actually. It smells a bit like fairy liquid. Not surprising, that's why I washed it in. So there we are, that's basically what I've been getting up to recently. A lot of pattern writing, which is good for me, and a lot of just rest and relaxation, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it. So let's move on. In terms of community stuff, there have been a few people asking questions in my the podcast questions thread on my groups. If you haven't joined my group on Ravelry, it's just Sockmatician. Head over there now and join in. And there is a dedicated thread there for podcast questions, and I'll answer questions on anything really, about me, about knitting, about my performing career, don't mind. I have one here from Chanel, who has her own podcast. I can never remember what it's called. Let me just see if I can... the Piper Nell podcast, that's it. She's got her own group as well, and she's really fun. I enjoy watching her when I can. She says, "Hi Nathan, this is a totally frivolous question and you are no obligation to humour me. But," with several U's, "I notice that sometimes you'll say a few words in American accent, like when you're quoting someone American." Well, I do. I'm aware of this. This is not news to me. What kind of accents have you had to do on stage? Could we see your acting skills and see you put on an American accent for a bit on the podcast? Doesn't have to be a lot, just read a few sentences or something. She says, "As an American, I'm more than willing to provide an obnoxiously, stereotypically American set of sentences for your enjoyment." Well, I'm not going to do that. Sorry, Chanel, I'm not. That'd be mortifying. But in terms of what accents have I had to do, a lot of musicals are American. I think it's an American musical comedy is definitely an American art form, and when we perform them over here, more often than not, they are done in American accents. So I've spent probably more time singing and acting in an American accent than I have in an English accent. For Miss Saigon being a prime example, that whole show is for the GIs, which I was, who's sung in an American accent. It's kind of a general standard American. There's never anything too specific in terms of a regional accent of where it comes from. I played Brad in the Rocky Horror Show, and that's he's from it's Denton, isn't it? Denton is Ohio, I believe. Again, that was just played in very much a sort of standard American, middle of the road. It sort of doesn't matter that much over here. Over in England, it's a terrible thing to say, but because British audiences don't necessarily recognise or are familiar with the nuances of the regional American accents, we tend to just go straight down the middle of the road. Unless you're doing sort of something very specific, and recognisable accents over here would be kind of Southern American or New York, but basically that's it, other than general American. So yeah, I've had to do quite a lot, and I'm not going to do them for you now. So there. But thank you for your question. Also, I have now. This is quite funny. I have a big Angeline from Australia has sent a post which has a lot of questions in it, and I'm going to answer them all right now. So, how do I store my socks? Are they balled up, neatly folded, running amok? Well, they're pretty much running amok. I don't ball them, I don't fold them. I don't really keep them just in a bag, which is really bad. I do have a very small underwear drawer which is full of non-hand knit stuff, and it's when I've just done a wash and everything's gone in it, it's jam-packed. So there's no room in there for my hand knit socks. That's my excuse, that is my reason, and I'm going to stick to it. But I do, when I've just done a big hand wash and they're all lining up over one of the radiators, then when they come off, I'll sort of collect them up and put them in their pairs. But I think I tend to. I don't really have a system. Very much a boy in that respect. I beg your pardon. Very much a boy in that respect. I just sort of I'll pair them up and put them in pairs, but just sort of lay them on top of each other, lying flat in a pile, really. So it's not a pile just thrown in a corner. Although that's what they become when they've been worn and they're waiting to be washed. They're just thrown down in a corner somewhere. But they will sort of stack up neatly, like pancakes, when they've been washed. Next question. How do I cake my yarn? Do I have a preferred winder method? I use all my body parts and typically get very tangled. I've only recently learnt about ball winders. Well, I do have a ball winder and I have a Swift as well. So I use that a lot. My Swift is not an umbrella Swift, it's a cross bars that's just two long sticks with holes in the ends, so you could several holes in the ends, so you can adjust the length, and a notch in it so that they stick into each other. That sticks on a stand and it spins. It's from Gu, who are the company that make the needles that I use most of the time. And I didn't know it was from Gu at the time. I bought it before I became a fan of the needles. I just ordered it online and it came from China, I believe. And the ball winder I have likewise. It's a standard ball winder. It clamps to something, but I don't actually have anything in this room that I can clamp it to, so I tend to just hold the base and wind it like that and have it balling itself up next to the Swift, which then obviously pulls as it goes through. And the Swift, have you noticed, anyone working with a Swift and a ball winder, have you noticed that towards the end of the winding session the Swift will be spinning more quickly? I'm sure you already know why, so I'm not going to patronise you by telling you. I just thought I'd point it out just in case you haven't. So yeah, I've got one of those. It's not. I don't think it. I mean, it must be made by someone. I don't know what make it is. How early into your knitting experience did you start designing? It seems they happened at the same time. Well, they did. Yeah, they absolutely did. My first pair of socks was just a plain pair of socks with nothing, not even a ribbed cuff. They roll a bit at the top, not too much. I still wear them now, and they fit really nicely. Actually, one of the best fitting socks I've ever made, and that was just how I learned the geography of a sock. The second pair of socks I made, my very next project, that was also my first adult project. My second pair of socks, which was my second project, I designed myself because I couldn't find a pattern that I really liked. It was like, oh, I like this apart from that. Oh, this would be really nice apart from that bit. So I just put it together myself, and because I'd been taught, I've explained all this to people before, you may have caught up with this already, but because I'd been taught about the geography of a sock rather than just here's a sock pattern, learn the stitches and knit it, I knew about how to engineer the shape of all the different aspects of a sock. So designing didn't feel like I was designing, I was just sort of putting bits and pieces together. That's designing, right? And I've never looked back. What are your thoughts about double knitting with fuzzy wuzzy yarn, she says. I have some baby alpaca that has an insane halo that I was going to try out. Well, go for it, I say. But be warned, Angeline, be warned. I would not bother doing some double knitting with a very intricate pattern if you're going to be using a big fuzzy yarn, because the two yarns are going to, the halos are going to interact with each other, and you've gone to all that trouble alternating your stitches, creating two sides of the fabric, making the pattern, for it not to be seen. So big bold patterns, yes, go for it. Small, delicate, intricate patterns with lots of colour changes, I would suggest the cleaner your yarn, the better. It just shows up better. That's not to say you can't come up with some amazing effects. Maybe one smooth yarn and one fuzzy yarn could be fun. As long as they're similar weights, it wouldn't really make a difference. And even if they're not, you still get interesting textures. You might not get the clean two-sided approach that you'd normally get. You might get one showing through if it's thinner, but some interesting interesting textures and fun patterns to be had by experimenting with yarn. So why not go for it? I think that's it. yeah, that's it for that one. So thank you very much for your questions. And I've got another one on here. Oh yes, here it is. So this is Night Portal on Ravelry, whose name is not on her profile. It says, Nathan, in my experience, brioche can get rather stretched out horizontally and is stretchier than DK in general. Have you encountered any issues with this when combining the two in a pattern? If so, how do you get around it? Well, in the scarf pattern that I was referring to earlier, yes, there is this panel of brioche that winds itself down the side, flanked on either side by standard DK. And yes, you're right, brioche is much wider. It's a big old wide ass stitch, and I think that's part of its joy. I mean, the Wren scarf is 16 pairs of stitches wide. That's it. It's 32 stitches, and some of my other DK scarves are like 50, 60 stitches. So I mean, it's absurdly wide. I love that. It means you don't have to work quite as many stitches to create the finished project. But in the scarf, particularly, there's no there are no elements where brioche is on top of DK or vice versa. So as you're working across, you've got DK, then brioche, and then DK. And so it allows that brioche panel to be as wide as it wants to, which is wider than the same number of stitches in the DK section would be, but it doesn't cause any problems at all. It's just having the two sections that can go and they can stretch apart as much as they like. So it hasn't caused any problems. In fact, I'm putting it to good use in an upcoming project that I'm swatching for at the moment, and this is the swatch for it. So it's deliberately exploiting that very aspect from going. You can see on this yellow panel here. I mean, the tension is awful. I just was knitting as quickly as I could without paying any attention to it. You can see that I'm going from a DK panel here, and then all I do is transition into brioche, and you can see it just wants to flare quite substantially. So the width of it is a lot more. It's the same number of stitches. There's absolutely no increases done here at all. And likewise, this section here, which is brioche in the middle, as soon as you stop doing the brioche and you go to DK, it goes straight in and goes into the center. So I'm going to be experimenting and playing around with some of that. I really like the textures and the patterns of that. I think the mistake I've made is to have this panel blue. I would keep all the DK panels the same. That's not DK because they're both, but all the alternate panels the same color. So this one in the middle would be blue, on this side this would be yellow, this would be yellow, something like that. And it'll be wider, and I'm really looking forward to having some fun with it. So in answer to your question, you can use it to your advantage. So let's talk about whips, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Let's talk about all the knit things and the purl things that may be. I should never, ever let my brain just do its own thing. I've upset myself with that. I am working. Well, I don't like. People were calling this a half finished object. I don't like. I have a finished sock. You've seen the first part of it, but I've now finished this sock, and I'm really pleased with it. This is the Regia yarn that looks a bit like that. And the colours of it are there on the back. Colour and dye lot. You can see just there, here. And it's come out really well. I like, it does look a little bit bleached out on camera here, but this is a toe-up sock, and this is using the recipe that I'm putting together. That's one of the other things I'm working on at the moment. I'm nearly there with it now. I'm in the middle of checking it through, working through the second sock, and then I'll just go through all the maths and write that up and release that as well. So it's very, very simple, basic sock. It starts with Judy's Magic cast on, and then I work increases on the side of the toe until I reach my stitch count. With this sock, it's a 72 stitch sock, and I was working on 2.25mm needles. Then I work a certain number of rows. I believe it's 60. This one's, remember last time I had to rip back quite a lot of this sock because it was just too short. Wow, this one's a little bit too long. So I think 60 rows is probably enough for my foot, but there's bound to be a way of checking it, of getting from sort of one bit to another. There must be a proportional thing, because your foot is the length of your head, right? So basically, and that's also the same length as the crease of your wrist to the crease of your elbow. If you don't believe me, you think my feet aren't that big. Well, they really are. So there must be a way. Actually, I've got markers all the way up my arm. All I need to do is go from the crease of my wrist to where the gusset increases start, which seems to be sort of around halfway up the vertical line of the T of Nathan on my arm. I've got my own measuring device. Never even gave that a thought. I may use that in the future. Then, what I like about this is it is a traditional heel flap and heel turn sock, but worked completely toe up. Now, in the past when I've done this kind of sock toe up, there's often been really big holes here at the top of the heel flap where it joins the gusset on both sides. And I've discovered a way of doing it which means you don't have any holes at all. Let me just take my watch off so I don't snag it on the inside of the sock, and I shall get inside it and show you. I am so chuffed. There's no need for it at all, and most people just do too many rows. That's what it is. Here is, get the camera to focus on that. There's no hole there at all. I mean, you're not going to see daylight through there. What actually looks like a hole, that's calling me a liar, is actually a very dark blue stitch. And likewise on this side as well. Absolutely zero zip zilch nada nanty hole. So it's perfectly possible to do with no extra stitches being cast on and worked into the corners. Nothing like that at all. It's so simple. You just stop around early and go around the back rather than going back across the heel flap. It's that simple. I'll put details in it. Then when you're back in the round as normal, and then the only thing I don't like about toe-up socks is getting a cast off which is stretchy enough that doesn't flare, because that all frilly. I mean, it looks fine when it's on, but I just don't. My cuff down socks don't do that. I use the German twisted, or the old Norwegian cast on, two names for the same thing, which is a version of the long tail cast on with an extra twist in it, and I do it on two adjacent needles rather than just on one. And that, that always gives me ample stretch, but it doesn't flare, it doesn't ruffle like that. And when I put it on, why don't I demonstrate now? When I put it on, it's fine, but I always feel that there's not, here we are. I mean, it's a very nice, well-fitting sock. I always feel that there's, I don't know, it's in danger of ruffling horribly, but there we are, there's the sock, worn, and no holes here. Very happy with that. So I am currently working on the second one. I have finished the toe increases, and I'm working on the foot section here. This progress marker, thank you to Joyce in Australia, is one of my lovely boy love stitch markers there with the nice rainbow on the back. I'm very proud of those, and that's just to tell me where I started doing the straight rounds for the foot, so I don't have to work out where the toe increases stopped, because sometimes that can be quite tricky to see on stuff that you've already knit. And that this has become my tube knitting at the moment. Whenever I'm on my way to work, if I'm doing any knitting at all, then it's nice to have something I can just bring out and not have to think about. So until I get to doing all the shenanigans for the heel term, which of course I will need to be going back to my notes and referring everything to. So I can do probably about 6 or 7 rounds on my way into work, and maybe the same again on my way home. So it shouldn't take me too long. I'm going to work tomorrow, so I'll get a bit more done then. The last couple of days, not knitting on it at all, because it's all been about pattern writing. So this is why I'm taking advantage of having it in my hands to do half a round here. And it's quite difficult to continue chatting, not to drop a stitch, and look at you and concentrate on doing everything all at once. But I am a boy, so I'm brilliant at multitasking. Just getting to the end now, and then I can put this down and carry on with the podcast in the way I should. There we go. So last 2 stitches, 1 and 2. There, some knitting accomplished today. Other works in progress. Tragically, I haven't touched my piano number 3. Now this is starting to bug me now, because I really enjoy working on this. I think it's going to be gorgeous. It's the same as when you saw it last time. There's one side and there's the other. This is the one which is the 3rd in my series about Giuseppe Piano's fabulous space filling curve, and it's done on the bias, so the rows are actually across on the diagonal that way, which is why it's a funny shape on the needles there. And the structure of that stitch is all done with double knitted cables. I love it. I'm really, really enjoying it. I just haven't had the chance, and it's certainly not switch your brain off knitting, so I do need to keep my head in the game with that one, because there's no discernible pattern repeat that one could remember. So it's a case of being a slave to the chart all the way through, which I don't mind doing at all. I just need the right headspace and the right environment for it. So sadly, this is still a whip. This is, I promise you now, by the time my next podcast, I will have done some more on this. This will be the one I go back to. But I started a couple of nights ago, I started a new project. And because I've said before that I want this year to be the year of stranded knitting, for me, I want to get better and better and better at it, which is why I made the Hillary hat out of this. It's why I made the Hillary hat, because I want to get better at it, because I've always struggled, because I've never done much stranded work, and I've been a little bit wary of it. So I'm making a cowl. It's a large, long cowl, so it's not like this, which just sort of slips over your head and sits there. It's going to be sort of at least twice the length, and probably wrap it around twice, and it's going to be stranded as well. And I'm making it from where's the ball band? I'm sure I brought it over here. Maybe I didn't. How annoying. I thought I had. Anyway, this is from John Dunballum from Easy Knits. This is his big boy, and it's, I forget the percentages, but it's Exmoor Blueface and alpaca, and actually that's showing up as a slightly brighter purple on camera. It's a dustier purple in life. No, can't find an area where it looks like it, but it's a huge cake, huge yarn cake, and it very nearly didn't fit on my ball winder at all. It was like really nudging up against the upright bit, and I was having to sort of keep my finger in there to stop it from snagging on the end of the loopy bit of wire. And so this is 150 grams, it's 500 yards. It's fingering weight, but I think it's a little bit thicker, so it's lighter, but it's thicker. So it weighs the same, but you get, you know what I mean. It's really interesting. It's not the softest yarn I've ever worked with. It'll drape really nicely because of the alpaca, but it's a little bit. It's got a bit of an alpaca prickle to it. Maybe that's not the alpaca. Maybe that's the blueface. I don't know, but I don't know. I think it's going to wash really, really nicely. And being a stranded piece of work. It'll definitely get a wash and a block just to even out any tension discrepancies. So I'm using that as my background colour, and I'm using, for my accent colour, I'm using one of John's gradient packs. So this is the set. It's hard to see here. So there's 5 colours of grey. This is the one I'm starting with, and I'm going to be halving them so that I'm starting at the outside of the cowl with the darkest one, going to the lightest one in the centre, and then working back to the darkest one at the end. So it'll have a sort of a mirror symmetry. I started last night with the stranded section of it. So I've done a bit of garter stitch around the edge, and I'm procrastinating before showing you because there's not actually a great deal to show you. It just looks like a big old hoop. And that's what I wanted to avoid. However, I'm talking nonsense, ignore me. But here it is so far. Look, that's it. Hey, there's my cowl. It's 360 stitches and it's on quite a long circular, but I'm not doing it magic loop because it's longer than that. So what's the good thing about it is I can just knit round and round and round and round and round and not have to worry about bulging wires at the edges when I've already got, let's face it, when I've already got enough to deal with my stranded tension anyway. But let's see if I can actually show you something that looks like I've actually done any work. Yeah, you can't see much. I'm only on the 4th row of the pattern itself. The tension is not too bad, I have to say. It's all right, you know. There's a bit where you can actually see something there. It's not pulling in or puckering. And on the back, this is what my floats look like. I'm not catching any floats. I don't like to. The longest any float will be is 5 stitches with this pattern. I think that's okay. And I quite like the look of floats on the back. And they might be a little bit too loose. I may have gone too far the other way. So I'm experimenting with this. Cowl is sort of a practice run for the tank top that I want to make later this year. I've got the kit for the Nahani River pattern. And I think maybe I've gone a little bit too loose with the floats, although better that than the other way around. So I'm going to stick with what I'm doing at the moment on that. I've got little stitch markers. It's a 36 stitch pattern repeat, and there are 360 360 stitches in the round, so it's 10 repeats per round. So I've just put in a little stitch marker every 36 stitches, so it's easy for me to see exactly where I am. That's the beginning of the round. That one's slightly different. And that's really all there is to say about it, except the pattern itself. Now, I have someone else to thank for this, and I can never remember her Ravelry name, so bear with me while I find this out. Because the pattern comes from a book that I was shown by somebody who is fairly new to double knitting. Let's just call her page up on here. She's fairly new to double knitting, but has released a absolutely beautiful pattern, which I will show you now because I think it's gorgeous. If I can find it on here, where would it be? Sorry about this. This is again terribly dull for you all. I have no doubt. So no, it's really not on there. I'm not going to edit this out. Just talk amongst yourselves. So let's scroll down here. That's January. No, it must be on this page. I think here it is. I found it. It's jumping around on my page as different pictures are loading. But so String Theory Design is her Ravelry name, and I'm afraid I don't actually know her name because we've contacted each other and she's lovely, but just through Ravelry, and her name's not on her profile. But the pattern that she has put together is for a double knit cowl, which is absolutely gorgeous. Isn't that just stunningly beautiful? Now she is obsessed with like ancient knitting patterns and traditions, like I was with the Sanka scarf, and she took the chart from an old needlework pattern from Victorian period. Now she put me in. She's working on various other things. There's a book out there which has lots of different old etchings of needlework patterns in it that dates back to like 1527. So these patterns are incredibly old, and I was like, oh my god, they're stunningly beautiful. And they're just pictures of like mosaic squares on the page. And so I've wanted to, ever since she showed me, I thought I need to use one of those patterns. So I'm using one of those patterns. I've sort of copied the chart. I've had to make a few changes here and there because it's not always that accurate. But actually, do you know what? I'm going to show you the chart on here, but you don't get a sense of the pattern. Do you know what? There's not really any point. Well, you do from a distance actually. So that's one repeat of the pattern that I'm making, but actually this half diamond and this half diamond, when they're together, it looks like that's all about the cross, but it's actually all about the focuses of the diamonds. I'm not saying that very succinctly. Let me see if I can pull up the original design. So it's really, really lovely, and that's going to be the stranded aspect of the cowl that I'm making. That's really badly put together. Oh, here it is. Here it is. If I can just enlarge it on screen so you can get a chance to see. There we are. That's what the pattern looks like in the original book. I think it's gorgeous. I love the fact that it comes from the 16th century, and that you can see on there. You can see that's the original drawing from the book, and I've copied that chart for myself, and I'm making it into the cowl there. So that is my those are my whips. In terms of FOs, only one other really. There's that half FO, but I said last time that I wanted to knit myself another one of these, which I have done, and I've used the same colours of yarn that I made the original Piano No. 1 scarf out of, and here it is. You see the contrast is much, much stronger between the grey and the turquoise, and you can really see how the turquoise peeks through those vertical bars of the grey there. That's what gives it the portcullis cowl its name, and I just love it. I absolutely love wearing it. I love you can sort of fold it around. You can this is all knit with the knit by numbers from John Arbon, the same way that this was, but this is done with the two colours. I think it's 37 and number 2, I believe. 2 and 37. 2 being the grey and 37 being the turquoise, I think. But what I love about this pattern is obviously it's got a very, very obvious banding stripe around the centre, but you turn it inside out, and essentially that banding goes away. It's just alternating lines of grey, blue, grey, blue, all the way along. Very odd. But there it is, very, very visible on the front. I don't know how that works. So that's, I've spoken enough about that already. So that's really it in terms of my finished objects. So tell me about you guys. I want to make sure that we get chatter going in the group, so please show me anything that you're working, post pictures, and we can all admire each other's things. Just shove it in the general chatter group. It's a really nice place to collect everything, and I'd be really, really happy to see it. It doesn't have to be anything that you're knitting that's one of my patterns. It's not about that. It's about just sort of getting to know each other and getting to know each other's knitting tastes. And please comment on each other's stuff. Let's really get this chatter going between the two of us. I don't have anything more I want to say. This is quite a short episode today. I was going to do the whole thing of what's tat and grammar rants, but I'm actually not going to do that. So I'm going to keep this one nice and short. And so, although this podcast episode is now a finished object, remember, I've forgotten something that I really, really should have talked about earlier. Something and twigged by me about to finish. So let me just bring up some of the information on here. This is amazing, and it absolutely blew my mind. So let me find out exactly where this is. I got contacted by a wonderful lady. And let me find, I can't remember her Ravelry name, so let me find that first. It's going to be in the grammar, I think. Every time I go to, I should have prepared this, shouldn't I? No, that's not what I want to do. I don't want to start. I want to do more. Every time I go to this, I stop being able to talk. Okay, so I'm going to get names entirely wrong. So Jutta from Finland, Jutta, Jutta from Finland, who is Bezakira. I don't know how to pronounce Finnish names. I'm so sorry. Has contacted me and told me one of the most amazing things. Anyway, Jutta, can't do it. Jutta said to me, we were talking about grammar, punctuation, different things in different languages, and it turns out that my little hashtag, OSAT, for you, my intrepid OSATers, being the acronym for, it's not really acronym, initialism for one stitch at a time. I've always used that as my positive message, as in, just take it one stitch at a time. Knitting, no matter how complex it is just one stitch at a time. But in Finnish, OSAT, which I believe is an approximation of how it's pronounced in Finnish rather than OSAT, but OSAT is a word, and it means you can, or you know how. It's mind officially blown. I read this, I was sitting at work, I just had some downtime, I just happened to log into Ravelry, and I read this post. I was like, oh my god. When I was sort of fiddling around with things, one stitch at a time was the tenet that I wanted to talk about, I desperately wished that the phrase could stand for something and mean a sort of, the letters would make a word. I didn't know that they did. I couldn't possibly have foreseen that what they mean is something so appropriate, so positive, and so inspiring. You can, you know how. You are able to. It's so brilliant. So OSAT is OSAT, and that is the most brilliant piece of news I have had since I started knitting, I think. Genuinely. I could not be happier about that. So Jutta, thank you so much for, please correct my pronunciation of your name if that's not correct. So please accept my thanks and my gratitude for letting me know about that. It made me so happy. So to anybody who thinks that knitting, particularly double knitting, is beyond them, OSAT, you can. Just take it one stitch at a time. And now, this podcast episode really is a finished object, but remember, life is a work in progress. Just take it one stitch at a time. You know how.